Indian River Connections brings you the first source you can watch for truth on board decisions in Indian River County. The Board Report, where taxpayers and policymakers intersect. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite platform to get notified when we go live on Fridays at 7 p.m. Visit IndianRiverConnections.com for more.
I can't hear you. Can't hear you.
Yeah, I can't hear you either.
Turn your mic on, Joanne.
Okay, I'm on, but I can't remove him from the scene. There we go. Oh.
There you go.
All right. Hey, guys, we had a little bit of technical difficulty. We're kind of spoiled because Mike is our go guy.
You can say that again. We're kind of spoiled. We're like scrambling. Whoa, we can't go live. What's going on? We got to delete some memory. Oh crap! you know you're missing him when we run into those problems. But we got through because he teaches us how to do it. So that's good.
Yeah, he's so valued. We love him.
Go say a prayer for his mom. So.
Yeah, his mom's in the hospital, so we got to pray for him. And it's hard times, when your mom's sick or anybody close to you. It's really hard on the heart and hard on the, it's a lot of stress. So we love you, Mike, and we're thinking about you and your mom. So you're in our hearts. But anyway, today we have a great guest today. We have Marcus Carter with us.
Yep.
And I love this because I went to the Hispanic Republican Club, and that's run by Sandra Rivera, and she does an excellent job. She goes all out, and she's full of energy, and she's got that Spanish accent, and she's trying to pronounce names, and she pulls it together, and it was really wonderful because everybody there was a grassroots candidate except for, Jackie Rosario and Robbie Brackett. And Robbie Brackett's been doing a pretty good job for us. I've been checking his freedom score, and it's pretty good, And Jackie Rosario is, for the school board, and it's her last term. She's termed out, which I love term limits. We're going to miss her because she's done such a fantastic job.
Right. Yeah,
and but now we've got these grassroots candidates, and Marcus Carter, his current campaign, it emphasizes a lot of the things that we're all talking about, reducing federal spending, term limits, what I just mentioned, right?
Yeah.
Banning the congressional stock trading, stop, getting rich, with the benefits that they have. They're not even living and walking like we are anymore. They're elites.
Yep.
And of course, and then the border security, thank God Trump's in office and we've seen a change. But we still have all of those criminals here in the nation that are still causing a lot of havoc.
Mm-hmm.
And, he's also a veteran. So veteran issues are very important to him. And they're close to my heart, as my husband did 25 years as well. And I know how TRICARE is such a socialistic program. And I wish it was a better program where, our vets can go wherever they need to go to get the best service, not have to wait and, you're not in the West Palm Beach office, you've got to go to the Melbourne office or the Orlando office. It's like these guys could have died. Some of them don't have legs, and you're telling them they're limited to resources on what kind of care they can get. So, and he mentioned Social Security benefits as well, and mental health. That was a big thing with Marcus Carter. So it's really nice to bring him on board so he can share all of that information with us today.
Absolutely, and we've had a great response from our last two shows too, with Steve Rance and Thomas Califo as well. So just want to give a shout out to those two shows, and everybody subscribing and tuning in and sharing those shows as well. We got to get the word out there. These guys are veterans, and they're there to want to fight for our country and keep that Patriot score up, that freedom score, whatever that new program is. But we got to hold them accountable.
Yeah, well, the Freedom Score, that's the Heritage Center. You know where that is. The Heritage Foundation, they have a group called the freedomindex.org, and you can go and look at the bills that they're voting on.
Right.
So the Freedom Score is constitutional, right? We got to work
it.
constitutionally, and that's what it is about. And so let's take a break and go to our commercials, and then we'll come back with Marcus.
Sweet.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Pippin, and I'm running for Indian River County Commission District 2. As a wife, mother, and longtime community advocate, I've spent years standing up for taxpayers, families, and government accountability. I'm running to protect our quality of life, support law enforcement, manage growth responsibly, and ensure your tax dollars are spent wisely. To learn more, request a yard sign, volunteer, or get involved, visit votejenniferpippin.com. Together, we can keep Indian River County the best place to live, work, and raise a family. I'm looking forward to earning your vote on August 18th.
I'm Dr. Jackie Rosario. I'm a mom and educator, and I'm honored to serve as your school board member for District 2. In 2022, I was endorsed by Governor Ron DeSantis as the common sense conservative voice on the school board, protecting parental rights, holding bureaucrats accountable, ensuring local control, school choice, and academic excellence for all students. As an experienced, qualified leader with proven results, I'll continue fighting for safe schools, academic excellence, and opportunities that prepare every student for college, careers in technical, vocational areas, military service, and life. Your voice matters, and your vote counts. On August 18th, re-elect me, Dr. Jackie Rosario, to remain your school board member for District 2. Let's continue to reach and teach every child, every day, in every way. Visit reelectjackie.com for more information.
All right, hey guys, we're back, and we've got Marcus Carter with us.
Welcome, Marcus.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate you guys allowing grassroots candidates to be interviewed and actually express what their vision is for the district. Some of the other news agencies want to ignore us, so I appreciate you guys being transparent and allowing voters the opportunity to see each candidate.
Absolutely. That's what our platform is. It's, in your connection is connecting people with candidates, and that's what we do best,
Yeah, it's getting harder and harder for grassroots to get out there because there's so much money out there. The PACs take control. You've got people that endorse people. They're collecting chits. That's one candidate gets in office and he's helping everybody else. And hey, when it comes to time to vote for them, hey, remember I helped you out.
Mm-hmm.
And I really don't follow endorsements as much anymore because that's what happens. People start collecting their chits, and especially when people have been in office for so long. I don't know about you guys, but I'm getting tired of seeing people get so senile and old and fragile. It's like, how are they even relating to the public anymore?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, term limits, like you said before.
Well, I don't think they are
Exactly.
either, I really don't think they are relating to the public. I think it's part of the problem, I think this country is facing a challenge that's very similar to what the colonists were facing in the 1770s. We might not have a tyrannical king, but we got a tyrannical system. And if we've learned anything from Donald Trump, it's that the system is rigged for the elite at the expense of ordinary Americans. So the onus then falls on the Americans. What does it take to make our country of, by, and for the people once again? What does it take for us to get past the idea that only those funded by corporations and special interests are the only viable candidates we have at elections? And what is the road to get around the money in politics? And that's really what I've been focused on, not just in this campaign. I've been focused on that since 2019 when I first opened up our first PAC that was designed to educate and motivate ordinary Americans on the steps it takes to become candidates and encourage people to run for office. I believe that's the first shoe that wants to drop. We hear this thing about draining the swamp. Well, who's there to fill the void if we do drain the swamp? Where are the good Americans who understand the responsibilities that accompany our freedoms? And when are they going to stand up and offer themselves in service to their nation to be the stewards of the future that America needs from its citizens? So I've really been working very hard on building a true pathway around the money in politics. And that involves, it's hard work. It involves, you got to reach, over an 18-month period, you got to reach 300 voters a week. That gives you the 25,000 voters that you're going to need to win a primary. We've done that. That's what we've done. We've reached more than 300 voters by Wednesday most weeks, actually. But there is a way to get around the money, and we're intending on proving it and showing it. And like you were talking about how these career politicians will get other candidates and support and do this endorsement. I think we actually have to do that the same way, but we just have to do it with the grassroots candidates. So one thing that I share with voters all the time is, I'm not going to make promises about Washington. I'm not here to pull on your heartstrings. I'm not a career politician playing this the same way career politicians play. I'm building a playbook for a new type of candidate. And the one thing that I know I can provide to this district is helping that first shoe that needs to drop, helping good people stand up, see the pathway around the money, and if they care enough about their communities and they're willing to do the hard work, we're going to help them be successful. And the promise I make is that I don't care what the election is, there's 7 counties in this district, that in every race, whether it's a Senate race, a state house race, all the way down to mosquito control, we're going to make sure that there's a good person who's dedicated on serving their communities, standing up to run for office. And that's really where I want to take this after we win.
Marcus, do you think you need to almost change the minds, the way people are thinking? Because, Republicans are and conservatives are very pragmatic. And when you're pragmatic, you say, hey, I'm going to vote for the guy that's most likely to win, not the guy that I think really needs to be on stage. Kind of like you were saying, you hear all these people, you go knocking on doors, they love Bobby Williams for governor, but the pragmatism is going to tell these voters not to step out of the box. So how do you want to encourage people to run, but at the same time, you want to encourage people to step out of the box. How do you do that?
Well, again, I think a lot of that is through demonstration. You bring up a good point with Bobby. That's a common conversation that I have at the front door with voters every day. In their heart, voters believe Bobby Williams is the best option for Florida. But that pragmatism comes in, and they're like, well, if I vote for him, I'm just throwing my vote away for, the established, the one who has the most money. And so I've been sharing this with voters. Like, you're not the only one who thinks that. Everybody has to realize this mass psychological ploy that's taking place. We're all thinking the same thing. And if we just follow our hearts, we might actually have the leadership that our hearts, we know in our heart is the best thing for us, for our future, for our state, moving forward. So I actually, I know you said you're not big on endorsements. Bobby Williams has endorsed my campaign as I have endorsed his. He is the best option for Florida. He truly is. And like I said, when we start finding candidates who are willing to do the hard work it takes to get around the money, look, if you take money from corporations and special interests, that's who you represent. You're not going to represent the people. And so that's why I'm very much against taking money from even like I'm pro-life, for example. I don't want to accept money from a pro-life organization either, again, because now my responsibility, my duty falls on that organization and not the people I'm here to serve. I can still be pro-life without taking their money, and they can still have their money and advocate for a pro-life America using that money, but it doesn't have to be infected into politics. So until we're willing to truly break that cycle, we're going to be stuck in the same thing. And I think we've spent our entire lives being let down by our politicians. So, more people are starting to realize that. When I knock on doors, we are received very well from ordinary voters. I think the hard part to get over is those who have been plugged in politically into the system for a long period of time. The longer you've been a part of the way things are, the harder it is for you to see the way things could or should be. And so I think the biggest hurdle that we have when we're dealing with voters face to face is if they've been plugged into the machine long enough, it's hard for them to see what we're talking about. But if you're just an ordinary Joe Schmo voter and I knocked on your door, the message that we have is received very well. It's very easily understood. People know where we need to get, I believe. The problem is they don't see the pathway, and that's where we come in. So, we're not just by knocking on doors, but by doing the targeting and understanding where voters are at. Most of these candidates, they'll spend upwards of $10,000 a month for voter software, to understand who are the voters, who are the mail-in voters. We don't pay a nickel for that. I built my own custom voter software that I'm not only able to use myself, but I'm able to share it with other candidates. And like I said, I'm always supporting other grassroots candidates. When I knock on doors, for example, in Indian River County, I always have Jennifer Pippin's palm cards with me. I always have Jackie Rosario's, Robbie Brackett, other grassroots conservative candidates. I'm always doing what I can to promote them, and I think we have to start working in that way, working together, which is, again, why I'm so adamant that from the power of the incumbency, we can find those other candidates. So we're putting the blueprint together. I always say Donald Trump put a light on a pathway. We, the people, have to walk it ourselves. He's not there to save it. God did not put him in place to save our country. God put him in place to send Americans a message. The system is corrupt. But you know what? It's not the corrupt's fault that they're corrupt. It's our fault. We spend our lifetimes allowing it to happen. And this country doesn't change and get back in the hands of the people until the American people change themselves. And I think voters are ready for that. Ordinary voters are ready for that. And I'm really excited and proud of what we've been able to put together to deliver that message and offer that hope.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's and you made some good points about plugged in voters that you can't change your mind. It's both Democratic and Republicans the same way, and you have Trump voters that are Trump supporters that walk in his shadow. It doesn't matter what he does, he's perfect, everything, they follow everything. And then you have Trump voters like myself who I've supported him and voted him, but I don't always agree, and I'm free to, and I feel okay saying I don't agree with that, and you can't agree 100%, but it is concerning because we do have actually a lot of people jumping in. Look at this race. We have so many grassroots people running for District 9. And same thing with the governor's race. There's just so many people jumping in to run. But the options that they have of winning is very small because, look, I was surprised they put Fishback in front of Bobby Williams. I was like, there's no way. There's no way Fishback is more popular than Bobby Williams.
Wow, that's crazy.
I just don't believe that.
Well, I think it's just the audience that he's captured versus the audience Bobby's captured. Bobby's captured the conservative voters, God-fearing Americans, Floridians, people who are focused on conservative values, and Fishback, which honestly I don't even know if he'll be on the ballot come Monday 5 p.m. when that judge issues his ruling. But he's tapped into a different demographic, younger, more energetic, maybe a little bit more rambunctious crowd as the college kids and younger. So I think a lot of that has to do with their own target audience. I do hope if the ruling does come out and Fishback is not on the ballot on August 18th, I really hope that the same voters who, and you got to give Fishback some credit. I mean, he's really captured the energy of the youth. He really has. I hope that's not all for naught, because I was always afraid that Fishback would almost produce a net negative at the end of the day, because if it's not his residency issues, there's plenty of other issues that could have disqualified him in the first place. And when you get young voters who are already disillusioned, already disenfranchised, you get them to buy into something. Well, what happens when that candidate goes away? Those voters become more disillusioned, more disenfranchised than they were even before he showed up. So I hope that Bobby can capture that moment and he can reach out to those same voters and offer them the thing that they're actually looking for with just a little bit more authenticity than what they were being provided already.
Nice.
So I got to ask you a question, because I had a few people that wanted me to ask you this question because you ran as an MPA against President Trump?
No, I did not.
Okay.
So
what is that rumor? I had to ask because I said I didn't know that, but what's going on with that? So I will ask.
So in 2019, I launched a PAC called Shorting DC. So I worked on Wall Street for a while, and you do options, you can short a stock. And this was actually inspired by the, do you remember the GameStop fiasco with Wall Street bets on Reddit? So this was inspired at that time. One thing I noticed is if all these guys, just regular guys, were able to get together and coordinate to hold on to that GameStop and put all these hedge fund companies exactly where they should have been for betting against it the way they were and taking out all those options in the first place. If we could do that type of coordinating and organizing, we could do it politically as well. And so I got started with, again, getting people to understand what the steps to just become candidates were in the first place. Because, I mean, nobody even knows how to do that, really. The general public doesn't. So that's how I got started. We wanted to, when we had candidates actually file to become, or when we had people file to become candidates, we wanted to help them. We wanted to give them a campaign contribution, something like that. Well, we were a 501c4. We couldn't. We were restricted. Once they became candidates, there was really nothing else we could do for them. So we got creative with it. We started thinking outside the box. So how could we achieve this mission in a way that we thought was more reasonable? So what we did was we opened a mock demonstrative presidential campaign. Through demonstration, we were able to show people this is where the direction our country needs to go. If we truly believe in of, by, and for the people, then it's on us. That's been the message that I've had consistently. Now, I did run an MPA in 2024, but I'll get to that. So it was in about April of 2023, I was approached by members of RFK's Democratic presidential campaign, and they informed me 6 months before he did it that he was going to leave the Democratic Party, he was going to become an independent, and he was going to file. And they suggested that when he did that, I take this program, this mock campaign. We weren't raising money. We weren't trying to get on the ballot. It wasn't an active run against any other president. It was a demonstrative process designed to encourage and motivate people to run for office. We went through the steps. Now, there's only one office in America that's nationwide that allows you to go around the whole country and share that message, and it happens to be president. I honestly never wanted to run. I never wanted to be one guy in a sea of evil. The one thing that I always noticed was that even if I have what it takes to run, I'm going to get there and I'm going to be ineffective because I'm the only one like that. I understand that other shoe that needs to drop. We need a revolution of leadership in America. That's truly what we need. And that's really been my goal from anything I've been doing politically, trying to be politically active. So that's what that was about. I wasn't trying to be president. I wasn't trying to get elected. It wasn't anything like that. But my opponents will use it as an excuse to disqualify me or say I'm some crazy guy on some crazy mission. It wasn't anything like that. Yeah. So when I found out RFK was running as an independent, the suggestion was made to me to do the same thing that I was doing, however, do it in one district. And of course, I lived in the 9th district, so I made the change. On October 9th of 2023, RFK became an independent candidate for president. And on October 11th, I filed as an independent candidate for Congress, for the same seat in Congress. And my goal was still to call out the corruption and dysfunction that exists on both sides of the aisle. And it does exist on both sides of the aisle. Now, getting through that entire MPA run, and even when I ran MPA, I wasn't in it to win it. I was knocking on doors with school board members, with county commissioners, county commission candidates, grassroots candidates. I was doing my best to help them be successful. That was the whole point of my campaign as well. But I still wanted to go through the motions because it's still important for ordinary Americans to see not only that these jobs belong to us, but that we're capable of doing them also. So I went through the motions. And honestly, it was at the, I had a debate with the NBC affiliate, West 2 in Orlando. And it was at that debate where I realized that I had more to offer, even at that moment. So it was almost before the election, I had already realized that, okay, voters are hard-headed, I get it, no problem. You got Republicans, you got Democrats, and people are stuck in these houses. And now I was thinking, I'm standing out on the road and I'm looking at two houses, one's on the right, one's on the left. They're both on fire. And I was doing my best as an MPA to tell folks, come out of those burning buildings and let them burn down and we can rebuild on top of it. But what I learned in the process, conservative voters they're stuck inside that building. And if I care enough, let me go ahead and go inside this building. Maybe we can put the fire out on the right. And once this house is safe, we can still point over to the left and say, hey, look, that house is still on fire. And that's kind of the way I saw it. So it was almost at the debate, I determined I was going to have to do this again as a Republican. I was a conservative independent before. I've always been conservative. I've always been pro-life. I have my 8-year-old son on life support who we chose not to abort for proof that I've always been pro-life. I've always had conservative values. But that whole deal with running for president, it was a demonstration to Americans to stop doing the same thing we've done our whole life because we know what that result is going to be, and it's insanity if we continue to do this as a nation. We've got to change how we do it. Now, what is the pathway it takes to change? Again, that became the challenge, and that's kind of where I shifted as a Republican a little bit more. What does it physically take from us? Well, again, it takes that software that we built on our own. So we saved $150,000 by not using the software that vendors provide, but building our own, and we're effective with it. We know you can blindfold me anywhere in our district, and as long as I got my tablet with me, I'm going to know where I'm at. I'm going to know which voters on which street to reach. So you got to find a way to get focused, and then you got to do the hard work. And again, you got to knock on 500 doors a week, 400 doors a week. Well, I would say 300 minimum, but anywhere from 300 to 500 doors you knock on per week. You meet with those voters, you share with them, direct your message. And I think my hope now is that I don't really have a whole lot of time to follow up with the voters I met more than a year ago. I think my hope now is just hanging on and hoping those voters, that message that we had resonates with them, and we can follow through on August 18th with the primary.
So you were a lifelong independent,
Yes, for the most part.
conservative independent. Okay.
I'm a lifelong, I hate choosing the lesser of two evils. And I realized in 2016, wait, if both the options are evil, then that's my fault, not theirs. And in America, there are responsibilities that accompany our freedoms. And if we don't uphold them, we get what we deserve. So that's what's prompted me to get more active.
Interesting. Wow.
So if you were elected, are there Republican positions you're willing to oppose?
Not off the top of my head. I think that I don't think there's any Democrat positions that I support. Let me put it that way. Let's talk about things like when we were already speaking about Donald Trump, for example. Donald Trump is worthy of our scrutiny. I support, I respect, I understand what Donald Trump's purpose for America was, but that doesn't mean he's perfect and he's not going to make mistakes. So, if I had been in office last year, I probably would not have voted for the big beautiful bill, simply because it created $3.5 trillion in deficit spending. And if there was anything that the 2024 mandate that elected Donald Trump was on, it was on our spending and our overspending and getting our budget balanced. And, the big beautiful bill didn't do that. So I would have not been afraid to oppose that and call that out. I think continuing resolutions are a nightmare, and we continue to do them. We need to get a Congress that's going to balance our budget, that's going to go through each administration. It's going to go through each budget line by line and identify what's a waste, what's not, what's needed, what's not, what's excessive, what's not, and balance our budget once and for all. And I know I can do the work doing that, for sure.
Yeah, so this app that you created, is that something that you have, it's something you can find on the App Store, or how do you share that?
Well, I don't. Right now
It's
our
not
own,
patented?
it's our own proprietary software that we built in-house for the campaign. The goal is to turn it into an app, and again, that comes with resources, and the resources come with success. So if we win this election, we're able to build this blueprint. In fact, honestly, we've done so much work already. I don't even think it's going to take a win in August for us to push through with this. We've had so much success with it. We've got our proof of concept down. We do know, win or lose, this is the pathway around the money in politics. And I already have, I don't want to say who, because I know they don't want me to. We've already got a half a dozen people we know who are going to be running, and they're going to be running on our platform, with our program, not just with our software, but with our strategy, with our guide, grassroots style. I don't hire consultants. I don't take money from corporations or special interests. We have our entire campaign is powered by volunteers. And most of those volunteers, I didn't even know 2 years ago. I've knocked on their door, and that's how we built this. And again, we get our country back, we stand up, but we take it back ourselves. And that's what we're trying to demonstrate. So again, if we're successful, I'll be more than happy to share that information, to find good people to stand up. And yes, they will have full access to the tools and the resources that we've developed so that they can have the same success that we had.
Yeah, that's great. That's fantastic. The thing that I really loved about that Hispanic club meeting, where all the grassroots candidates were, a lot of you guys were in the military, and I wanted to know a little bit about your military service. Tell us about that. You were in Afghanistan, and how long was your service, and what was your G rating, and what did you learn from that you can bring to the table?
I would hesitate to call all the candidates in this race grassroots, first of all. If a guy who has millions of dollars and he self-funds, this is the problem actually with what's just happened with the NBC affiliate WESH. There are 7 candidates in this race, and I just was notified today that I am not invited to the televised debate, that the only 4 candidates that are in the debate are the 4 candidates who raised more than $300,000. Well, the whole thesis of my campaign was we need to get around the money in politics. So I don't go out and ask for money. I don't try to raise it. We bootstrap this. So it's kind of counterintuitive to the entire message in the first place to make money the threshold. Now, on top of that, 3 of those 4 candidates got into the race after redistricting. This is, again, career politician move who saw an opportunity for themselves. I've been doing this for 18 months when it was a 3-county district and it was still a blue district, because that's what I believe in. I believe that this can happen if we do it the right way. But sure enough, redistricting happens. 3 guys get in the race. A couple of them the ones who have millions, they've self-funded, but they're considered grassroots candidates. They're the only ones that are able to get on the debate stage.
Yeah.
To me, it's
real grassroots, that is.
yeah, exactly. So I would hesitate on calling all these folks grassroots.
Yeah.
Just off the top. Honestly, I don't even remember your question now because I got on a tangent about.
I wanted to find out about hear about your military
military
background, and
Sure.
you went to Afghanistan,
Yes, I
and
did. I joined the Army, the delayed entry program. So I was still in high school when I signed up for the military. Once I graduated, I went to basic training. I was in Afghanistan when I was 19 years old. I was in Iraq when I was 21 years old. So right before I turned 20, I got home, or excuse me, right after. I got to remember now. Let's see, 2003.
You're not that old.
Yeah, I know, right? But I was in basically back to back. I was Afghanistan. I had orders for Iraq before I ever came back from Afghanistan. So we had about a 5-month window in the States, and then I went to Iraq. I had a number of different injuries in Iraq. One of the main ones was my lung had collapsed, and it caused some serious damage. I ended up crushing my heart. I did not know my lung had collapsed. I thought I just had maybe some bruised ribs or something. So I kind of held out on it for about 36 hours until I just collapsed and woke up a few days later in a tent hospital in Iraq. But that led to I was medically retired from the Army from that. And I don't know if you know how a med board works in the military. I know you said your husband was in the military, but I got med boarded. It's not anything that's in your control. It's out of your control. So I was retired after a little under 5 years of military service. I was retired. However, I did work for DoD contractors after that. I went back to Afghanistan under a DoD program, and I did biometric intelligence for the Department of Defense for several years, which ultimately led to, in 2012, I ended up in Camp Lejeune, which this was my final government assignment. I created the training program for the Marine Corps biometrics training. So I created the curriculum for that, which was about an 18-month project before I finally stepped away from that and got into investing, which is really where I transitioned. That was more of a hobby of mine in the first place, but especially when you go from high school straight to the military, and eventually you got to get away from it. And that's where I was at, especially, you've already been in Iraq, you've already been in Afghanistan, there's certain things, sometimes you got to move on with your life. And so that's where I made it to move on and get into investing, which ultimately led to a rideshare company that I opened, Drive Society.
Oh, nice.
This was, when I had my investment company, I had an opportunity to participate in a private equity round of funding for Uber. And so when I received all the information on Uber, their financials and all the data that they provide, I struggled with the efficacy of it. I realized at the time they were a $72 billion company. They had 1 million drivers worldwide. Now they're solely dependent on these 1 million drivers for their $72 billion valuation. However, if you add up the collective net worth of those 1 million drivers, you get a negative number. And so I could see how this doesn't really work out, how they just got a revolving door of drivers that they're just taking advantage of until the driver has nothing left to offer. They spit them out and incentivize a new driver to show up. So I created a rideshare company, which was essentially the same as Uber and Lyft. The only difference was, well, there was a few differences. Number one, drivers had to be fingerprinted, vehicles had to be inspected, the standard things you should expect from Uber and Lyft that doesn't exist today. But more importantly, the drivers received the equity of the company based on their own production. But I believe that is a true capitalist model, not the way that it's being done now. And so I did that. This is where I got involved with local government, with the state of Florida government. And, it's pretty well documented what happened over in Tampa Bay at this time. But I watched Uber and Lyft pay millions of dollars to have the county government and the state government work against me. And it ultimately succeeded. And like I said, working with the federal government for long enough, you see how corrupt things are. But it was an eye-opening moment for me, and it happened right about the same time Donald Trump was coming into the picture in 2016. That I didn't realize how rotten it was all the way down to the core. And so that motivated me, along with the confluence of the presidential election at that time. With my own experiences from Iraq and Afghanistan. One thing that I always say is, I don't feel like I served my country in Iraq and Afghanistan. It was sure my intention to, but there's a famous saying that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Yep. And so what I realize now is that the thing that I'm doing now, this is the service our country needed from us all along. And if we had been doing this, we wouldn't have found ourselves in those endless wars. We wouldn't see the problems that we have today, because most of our problems have common sense solutions if we just have people who are focused on the needs of their constituents and not the needs of their donors. So again, we have to find a way around the money, and that's what we're trying to do.
Well, and it's all by design too. It's everything. It becomes reversed. You had to go through what you went through in order for you to awaken to your true purpose and your true calling, because of what you saw in the military and in the finance, and then trying to be an entrepreneur and trying to create a business that actually gives people equity in the business as a real, like you said, synergy for them to incentivize, and they fought against you. So you awaken to this process. And like you mentioned before about Donald Trump and whether people like him or what they see is going on, you said it right on the head. It's a lightning rod to an awakening that sparked that. You saw that the establishment was enriching itself, and the people weren't getting anything back from it, and weren't getting anything in return. And the only way to fix that is for people like you and a couple of the people we've interviewed recently, or real true grassroots people that are knocking on doors, to go to Washington and to be able to represent the people without any kind of financial influence involved, where you're going to make money on the stocks because you're going to get inside information, you're going to become rich. And no, that's not what it's all about. It was about serving your country on our own home turf, and not overseas in some endless war that was all by design through 9/11 and all these other false flags that have happened over the years that we now realize were all false and was wrong and made us do things we shouldn't have done.
Right, man. But now you realize it. What are you going to do about it? That's really where we're at. And now you see it. What are you going to do about it? And I think this is where more people need to wake up still. I'll tell you, there's a difference between somebody I go knock on their door and somebody who's been plugged into the system long. There's a very different conversation that's happening in those two areas. But majority of us are the regular folks who are knocking on your door. So again, we need to recognize that in each individual, which again is why it's so troubling to me that WESH 2 has decided, oh, you didn't raise enough money, you're not qualified to be on the debate. We are the arbiters. We decide who the real candidates are and who aren't.
Well, you know why, Mark? Because what you're going to, sorry, Joanne, but what you're going to do is, if you went on the debate, you're actually going to be authentic, and you're going to tell them the truth. Where these guys that are fake grassroots, that are funding their own programs because they've become enriched through the system and became wealthy, you're actually going to tell the opposite of what the media wants them to hear. And so again, live backwards is evil. So you're being authentic, and they don't want that. So now they're like, oh, well, let's find a way to find the authentic guy that isn't funding his campaign through corporations and fundraising. He's doing it grassroots to push him out off the stage. And now you're pointing that out, and now we know, because that's part of the awakening process.
And we got on the ballot by collecting petition signatures. I mean, that signifies support itself.
Yeah.
But versus a guy who just pays his own $1 million or $2 or $3 million, somehow that is what the news wants to qualify as, oh, this person has support. No, they had money. They had their own money to go buy the seat. That's literally what we're offering this person, and we're telling them that it's okay. Not only we're telling them it's okay, we're discouraging people to say that there's actually an avenue to get around that as well. But there is, and we're going to keep fighting and pushing for that.
I agree with that. The real true test is, it should be, who can qualify by knocking on doors and getting petitions signed. That means you are actually boots on the ground. And that is hard work. You said it at the event. That is hard work. You're going from door to door, door to door. A lot of the conversations are nice, but sometimes you get a door slammed in your face. I know when I was knocking on doors, some guy opened the door with his firearm in his hand, and it was he was just waving it everywhere, unsafe. And I'm like, I'm just a girl.
I
Just
haven't had that
not
experience yet.
dangerous.
Honestly, I have very good experience at the door. I very rarely have a negative encounter at the door. I think part of it though is the proper targeting. We've really, even with when I collected petition signatures, I was only reaching out to Republican voters who vote in primary elections. And if as long as you stay in that niche group of voters, generally speaking, you'll have positive interactions. I cannot tell you how many times a day somebody thanks me for knocking on their door and how surprised they are. I can't believe a candidate is actually here in front of
Yep.
me. But it even goes further than that. I get phone calls, I get text messages from voters that I've knocked on the door. I share my number. If you want to ask me, I'll give you my number, and you can ask me anything. But I get contacts from them. Hey, I got a mailer from the other day. I won't say who it's from, but it was from one of my opponents. And the voter called me and said, I got a mailer from my opponent. It made me think of you because you took the time to knock on my door. So I always like to thank my opponents for continuing to send out those mailers, because every door I knocked on, I'd like to think that when they get that mailer, that voter is going to remember that, no, we took the time to go and engage with them personally, directly. And that's how you build something new from the ground up. It's not going to come from the top down. It's going to come from the bottom up. And that happens when the American people do something different.
Yeah.
Like boots on the ground, because you're having conversations with people and you're gauging who is where and where they are in their head, and then you can know right away if they're not awakened to what's going on around them. Then that's somebody that just you can either get their support somehow by showing them being authentic in the truth, and you might get through to them, but at least you know that you knocked on that door, and then that was one voter that you could. To reach one is to reach all. So if you reach that one, you can convert them and kind of get that little bit of a trigger point to where they're like, oh yeah, this makes sense. I understand what you're talking about now, because a lot of people aren't plugged into the whole politics thing.
And it's crazy. Here we are, we're 40 minutes into this interview, and we haven't even really spoken about issues. And the thing about it is, let's be real about it. Our issues are not that difficult to solve. It just takes common sense and caring about your constituents, So, let's talk about Social Security if you want. We can talk about, but the truth is, this is the first shoe that must drop. Good people need to run. Good people need to stand up. We need to understand what it takes to be our own stewards of our own futures, and recognize that the way we have been doing it has been wrong, and it's on us to change. The country will not change until the American people change. And I believe people are ready for change so long as they can see the pathway forward. And that's what we're doing. Like I said already, Donald Trump put a light on the pathway. We got to walk that path. I like to think that path is a rough road with some sharp edges and some steep cliffs, and we're doing our best to pave that pathway to make it easier for people.
Yeah, he did. Marcus, about immigration, beyond securing the borders, which Trump has done a great job, and thank goodness, and found a lot of kids, that were, being trafficked, and there's still probably more out there. What should happen to the millions of undocumented immigrants already living in the United States, because they're illegals? They want to call them undocumented, but they're illegals when they came over here and crossed the borders. So what should happen to all of those millions of people?
Well, they should go home. Absolutely, they should go home. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. There was a time before Joe Biden took office that I supported a proper amnesty program. You haven't convicted, you're not convicted of any crimes, perhaps other than being an illegal immigrant. You have a steady job. You're contributing to society. I believed that an amnesty program at one point in time, I don't want this to be taken out of context, at one point in time, I believed that an amnesty program was the most efficient way to reset our immigration as a whole. Not just our illegal problems, we have legal immigration problems as well. The backlog, the way that it's just terribly inefficient. It takes, I'm not going to say it's not supposed to take a long time, and there shouldn't be a certain threshold, a bar that we need to set the bar high, of course, but it's still a broken system, right? So since Joe Biden, since Papa Joe invited all these folks to come in because Papa Joe was going to take care of them, he ruined it for them all. And now we don't have a choice. We have to reset it. Now the efficiency becomes getting them all out and making sure it's done right. But I want to add another part to this too, because a lot of people think that that's insensitive and you're not, that's not the Christian thing to do. Well, what about all of those folks, let's say Venezuela, for example, We all know what Venezuela has the potential to be as a nation because we've all seen it in our lifetimes. We've seen Venezuela as a great nation. But what happens to the future of Venezuela when all of the doctors and the engineers and all of the talent and all of the lawyers and the people who have the ability to make Venezuela great again leave? How is it compassion that we allow them to come here? Because what's truly happened is you abandon Venezuela from reaching its full potential. Those people need to be in their country to make their country a better place, to get their oil production going, to get their healthcare system in order, to make Venezuela safer and more prosperous. They need their citizens there for Venezuela. And if we keep taking them and turning them into Uber drivers, where's the net positive on that? I don't see it. I think
Well, Florida's having a lot of issues with immigration as well. We've got a lot of foreigners that are here, but also we're having the foreigners that we don't want here, and that is people that do not want to assimilate to the American culture. They're coming here, and that's the one thing I had an issue with Amnesty is Amnesty didn't make sure that these people understood that to become an American, you are denouncing where you came from, and America is now your land of the free, your land of the home. This is the land you're going to be defending. I've spoken to, like when we had the No Kings protest here, I went out there and I wanted to interview some people, and I spoke to a lady and she said, yeah, my parents came over through Amnesty, and all this stuff is wrong. And I says, well, we're supposed to reach out to our representatives and talk to them about these things. Well, that's politics. I only vote for the president. And see, the reason they have this mentality is because when in their countries, they don't have three branches of government. And that's why Amnesty is no good. It's not teaching them how our form of government has a great role in securing our sovereignty and the rights and freedoms that we are naturally born with that God has given us. And so that it degrades our culture because they come over here and now they're protesting in the streets and they don't understand what they're actually protesting against the country that they fled to come here that accepted them under amnesty without them having to denounce, prove that they're denouncing their country.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
So we have that issue here in Florida, but we also have it throughout the nation where now the Supreme Justice Court voted against for natural born people that come here on vacation can have babies, and now they become citizens. And now we have places like we have our enemies moving here, not just the Chinese, but we have Islamification happening in several states. And Texas has been overrun not only with Islamification, but Indians and HB1 visas and all that fraud Nick Shirley is fighting. And as a district candidate 9, not only does that person represent Florida in those types of issues and writing bills like Randy Fine does, but they're also going to be involved in these bills and issues that affect the nation. It's not just secluded to Florida, and people think that this congressional district is just for Florida. Yeah, it does affect Florida, and we have a school voucher system here in Florida that was similar to what they had in Texas, and that's what Sharia private calling it religious schools were using to fund their schools to teach Sharia in their classrooms. And we need to have a representative that's not going to be afraid to stand up and say, you cannot have school vouchers for an Islamic religion, because that religion is totally contradictory of what the American Constitution is. They're not. It's not compliant with our nation.
Well, and just going back to the Supreme Court ruling that, on the, basically upholding the 14th Amendment, I think that was moot in the first place. I mean, I remember Donald Trump declared an emergency at the southern border. We had what we've clearly declared by law as an invasion. At what point do the children of the invaders get the same status as American citizens? See, it's not the same as, an illegal immigrant came over 30 years ago, had a kid, that kid's here, that kid's not documented, or that kid has citizenship. But we declared an invasion. So by the very definition of declaring that an invasion, I would think that we'd have the justification of getting all of those invaders out and their children. What happens if China invades America and there's a war and they bring people here and they're here for 5 or 10 years and they have kids? Are those kids all of a sudden American citizens as well? You know, I think just because this is a non-military invasion, that's saying it should be applicable where you're not infringing on the 14th Amendment by removing these kids. You're recognizing that a specific situation happened that the Congress has identified as an invasion. Well, then we should be able to get those folks out without, you know, violating our own Constitution. So I'm still an advocate for that. I'm still an advocate of, you know, anybody who's, especially through a certain age below, if your parents are illegal immigrants and you're at this age or below, you don't qualify for birthright citizenship because your parents came here as part of that, what we've already declared as an invasion.
Now, you know, Marcus, we've got a fan here, George Cologne, asking about the drugs, and I think that kind of plays into mental health because you are also an advocate for mental health. And how would you approach that and deal with that? And because fentanyl is all over the United States, and in our quaint little county here, you've been here. It's a cute little small county, but it's flooding in here, and we notice it because we are a small county. But we've got homeless rising, and with homeless people comes more drugs and fentanyl. What's your approach on that, and the relation with mental health as well?
I think, and they are intertwined. I would think that with more drugs comes more homeless, actually, as well. I believe there's a mental health epidemic happening in America. In fact, it's not just me who believes it. Virtually every person that I meet would agree with me. And I challenge everybody. When I say mental health, we're each thinking about somebody we know, somebody we care about, somebody. How is that not an epidemic? It's something that affects us all. Now, what are we doing as a nation to improve the mental health of Americans? I would argue that we're making it worse in our actions. You know, take California, for example. California has spent billions and billions of dollars on the homeless problem, only for the homeless population to increase in California. So tell me how that's working. So I'm certainly not advocating throwing more money and the same solutions that exist. What I'm thinking is, number one, I don't believe this is an epidemic that ends because of any one thing that the government does. This is going to take a collective nationwide effort of Americans to recalibrate their moral compass. As a society, we need to recalibrate our moral compass. But I do believe the federal government can get the ball rolling in the right direction, and that's kind of where I'm starting. I think we should declare an emergency. I believe we should establish a special subcommittee to start investigating not just what the root causes are, but the current treatment plans that we have in place for our root causes, because it's a multifaceted issue. You can talk about drugs, or you can talk about homeless, you can talk about PTSD, but we need to start talking about social media algorithms. We need to start talking about big pharma, and are they helping or hurting the situation? We need to talk about gender affirmation and what this is doing to the general public, what this is doing to further enable, or not even enable, but we're pushing people further down the mental illness road instead of pulling them back and getting them the help. So we have to identify these things. We have to identify where we're making it worse instead of better, and then we can start finding actual solutions on an issue by issue basis, you know. And I don't have all the answers to that. I'm not a mental health expert, but I see this is where things are, and I see that that's the direction we need to go. And so I think that we just got to get the right minds together to start calling it out and get the ball rolling in the right direction. And if we just start getting things going in the right direction, I have faith that Americans are going to follow through, and we can start improving mental health in America. But I don't think our schools get better. I don't think our economy gets better. I certainly know our healthcare system doesn't improve until mental health improves. You know, go to any emergency room right now and find out how many Baker Act patients are in that emergency room, taking away both the human and physical resources of the healthcare industry to support somebody in a Baker Act situation, and they're not helping necessarily the people who have actual medical needs right there at the hospital. I'm not saying they're not helping them, but like I said, we're stretching our resources too thin. So whether it's getting mental health facilities reopened, at least in the interim, so that we can deal with the current patients we have, but also finding ways to make sure we don't have to keep filling those institutions over and over and over, but get people the help that they actually need, get people back on the right direction, give people some sort of hope. And I think a lot of people just don't have any hope right now as well.
Yeah. How do you feel about the flock cameras and these hyperscale AI data centers? Where do you think that's really heading?
Well, it's headed toward a surveillance state, is what it is. It's a clear violation of our Fourth Amendment rights, and it's something that every American should be up in arms against, to be honest with you. But we've seen this happen time and again. I was just talking about my background in biometrics. This is something that I was a little privy to much earlier on than most folks, because of the way that we handled Afghans. In Afghanistan, they don't have an ID system. They don't have any sort of, way to identify who's your friend and who's your enemy, who's the insurgent and who's the... So what we started doing, we started collecting the biometrics on every person in Afghanistan. We collect their fingerprints. We collect their irises, facial recognition. In certain cases, we collect their DNA. We collect their handwriting, their voice. All of that is biometric information that can identify that person is that person. And so if you find a bomb on the side of the road, or better yet, a detonating device that has a fingerprint on it, you pull that fingerprint, then you're able to link it up in your database. Now, great, that was an effective in an insurgency situation, but I'm starting to see how these things are trickling their way into American society too, and how Americans are letting it. I mean, how many people use facial recognition for their phone, or their fingerprint for their phone? I don't either, but again, that's because of my background. But a lot of people are willing to give this information without realizing what that leads to. That information is being stored somewhere, it's being kept somewhere, and we're opening ourselves up to our own Fourth Amendment violations by what we're willing to volunteer over. So I caution everybody against that. There's nothing wrong with a PIN number. PIN number works just fine.
The answer I hear on that a lot is it's not controllable anymore, and they're starting to put AI cameras in the roads, in the streets, on the sidewalks. Everywhere you go, they're starting to put these flock cameras, and I can't argue with people who give me that answer and say, well, you can't fight it. And we have to legislatively fight it and get rid of it, because the flock cameras are getting so advanced now that the LPRs that the flock cameras work with, they have drones now that can work with your cameras, the flock cameras or your police flock cameras, and cover up to 20 miles. That's how advanced they are. And it's getting so out of control. And there's grants out for the police to use it, for the sheriff's department to use it. So they are the first people to want to use every piece of AI and data that you can, because it makes their job easier. But at the same time, we've seen on social... Yeah, we've seen on social media where a cop tried to use a flock camera to identify a woman because she looked similar to the one, and actually her truck was stolen.
I just saw another one on the news today. It was just on the news today about another one. I think it was Sumter County deputy used a flock cameras to spy on an ex's husband or something. I didn't read the full story, but they were arrested for it. But again, why are we giving them the opportunity to do this in the first place,
But we're not. They're doing it without. So how do we stop
why are we
them
allowing it to happen, I suppose,
Yeah, it's happening. Like, everybody on this show is against the flock cameras, but they're going up all over the place. We're talking about it, we're trying to let people know, but it's still happening. It has to be a legislative
well, the thing is like
issue.
I don't remember anybody getting together and asking our county about these flock cameras. I just started noticing them. I was like, what's that thing with the solar panel on top? Is that a camera? I was like, what the hell? I'm like, are they putting these up all over the county? And then you start to look into it, and you're like, what the frick's going on here?
And I'm sure you could legislate it, but I also think that this could be one in the courts as well. I think if enough people get together and start suing their own governments, we get into the courts and we can determine that this is an unconstitutional practice. But again, it takes activism. One way or the other, it takes activism. It takes
so much money to sue your government. It's and then to get a coalition of people together to do that. It would take so long in an effort like that. It has to be legislatively done, and that's where FISA comes into it, where FISA gave all the three-letter agencies the right to look us up and surveil us and consider moms and regular people terrorists.
But I think this also goes back to the intent of my campaign in the first place, because are we having this conversation if we have leaders who are dedicated to their constituents and not their donors? No, we're not. We're not having these conversations. So what's that first shoe that needs to drop? We need good people to stand up and run. People who will be dedicated to those they're taking a stand to serve. And once we start getting there, yes, these problems have solutions. I think, again, this is a common sense, no-brainer. Obviously, we don't want to be spied on by our government. We don't want to give, we want to have a safe society, but how is this making us that much safer, and at what expense? So yes, it's a clear violation of our Fourth Amendment rights, and again, this is where activism and involvement, and this is a self-governed society. When we choose to govern ourselves and stop relying on corporations, special interests to determine who governs us instead, we start finding solutions to these problems, because again, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, well, Marcus, I want to thank you for joining us tonight. And here is your page. It is carter26.com if anybody wants to take a look at it. And let me switch that over. There we go. That is carter26.com. What's the 26 represent, Carter?
It's 2026.
Oh, okay. I was thinking, yeah, hey, duh.
I thought it was kind of implied, but no
I
worries.
swear I'm really a brunette.
Jeez.
Well, thanks for having me. And like I said, I appreciate you guys taking the time. I see that you have the other candidates on here. It's great. The voters deserve to hear from all the candidates. And, voters should also be calling out. And I hope they do. I hope everyone reaches out to the NBC affiliate WESH 2 and let them know they want debates. They want to hear from the voters, and they don't want the media to decide who the voters get to hear from and who they don't.
It makes no sense. It's so bad, but it's so obvious.
Especially they had me debate in 2024. I didn't raise any money in 2024. They brought me to the debate. I've raised 20 or 30 times what I raised in 2024, and they're like, "Oh, you didn't meet the threshold." Well, where did this threshold come from all of a sudden?
Yeah.
You got to ask yourself, why is this happening, and why are voices, especially people who are working as hard as I am, just being shut out? For what reason? For what purpose?
Yeah, because you're speaking truth, and that's the whole thing. And they have to. These demons have to shut down the truth. That we're dealing with the spiritual demons.
Absolutely.
And they're Nephilim spirits that are just going to fight against you, because that's what they're meant to do. It's a matrix, and we live in a matrix situation where you're fighting against these Mr. Smiths, and that's what you're against. You raised more money last time when you were allowed to debate. This time you're not raising as much money, but you're not allowed to debate when everything's backwards. And so I applaud you for doing what you're doing. And
this is a spiritual battle. I'm glad you said this whole thing. Let's be honest about it. This is a spiritual battle we're having right now.
That's it. It's it.
We were blessed with the opportunity to be the stewards of our own future. Yep. And we've dropped the ball on that. And that's what's happening in our country in the first place. And again, as soon as we recognize it and we commit to being that kind of change, we'll get our country back, and it won't take that long. It's actually pretty low-hanging fruit if you stop and think about it. This isn't a complicated topic. This isn't anything crazy or outlandish that I'm bringing up. It's very, anybody who understands what America is should understand this concept pretty simply. And so, yeah, I hope more Americans keep waking up. I honestly, I don't know what's going to happen in this election cycle. I know that two things. I know we've done all that we could to reach as many voters as we possibly could. We're putting in 100-hour weeks every single week. I've driven 8,000 miles in the last 2 months, just going around in a circle to all these counties. We're making sure we reach everybody. I know there's a lot of people who said, "Oh, we're glad we got somebody from Indian River in the race." I hope voters aren't that short-sighted to think that you have to have somebody from Vero Beach represent you. I think you should be more focused on, is that person truly dedicated to serving their constituents, or are they a career swamp creature who's been there for 20 years already? Now all of a sudden they're going to try to portray themselves as something else, and voters will be misled simply because they're the local guy. I hope we're smarter than that this election.
Yeah, I think we're smarter than that. I mean, I don't even know who this Dan Green is, and I would love to meet him and hear him and bring him on the show, but it's getting really close to that voting line. We just have 3 weeks to go, and it's going to happen. And if he doesn't get on our show, how can I even consider him on the ballot? So It's unfortunate, but that's what we're here for, because we have our following of grassroots and regular local citizens, and we're trying to get the word out to them, because as you know, these Republican clubs, they don't always have night events. A lot of times it's luncheons, it's in the afternoon when the working class is working, and they don't really broadcast it out to a huge audience. They have a selected audience that it gets out to. So we want to make sure that we give an opportunity for the community to reach out to us and us reach out to them, so that there's a better option for the community that works.
It's that simple, and that's the responsibility you chose to take on when you established IRC Media. So that's, again, you're fulfilling your role. You're not playing favorites. You're not part of the political machine and the media apparatus that supports that. And I appreciate you guys being transparent like that and giving voters the
Yeah,
opportunity.
it helps us out too, because we get to touch, ask questions and see you guys and hear how authentic you are, and
I'm actually contemplating if I'm going to show up on Monday morning to the WESH debate.
I was thinking that. I was going to ask you that.
I'm really upset about what they've chosen to do, and then they didn't bother to tell us until today, and the debate's on Monday. So they waited
that's
until
very unfortunate.
Friday afternoon. But I'm seriously thinking I'm going to go ahead and put my suit on and show up there and give them the opportunity to correct this mistake they made one last time, or perhaps throw me in jail for showing up in the first place.
Right?
Yeah.
I know. Well, could you
Can't
do
throw
a
you in
thing where
jail.
you could be there and do your own debate outside the building, like
Right.
maybe
Exactly.
like live stream the debate, and then you stand there and then do your own like analysis of
That's a
like
good
you're
one.
there.
That's
Where
Why
is
not?
this
It
located?
can't hurt. It would
It's
bring
in
it
Winter Garden. It's at
Winter Garden.
the NBC affiliate studios in
Yeah.
Winter Garden.
Yeah.
It'll be right there. So, and I've already had a number of supporters reach out and say that they want to go on Monday and at least be in the parking lot waving signs and showing support and letting the mainstream media know that voters are not going to be blindly pulled into making a decision this election. We're trying to do something different, and that's what
Yeah.
I'm doing.
Yeah, just peacefully show up, nothing crazy like fishback,
No.
Yeah.
just peacefully show up, and I know somebody will approach you and want to interview you. And even though they didn't want you to have a voice, you will end up having a voice.
Hopefully.
You
Jim
know?
Bones wants to know where to get T-shirts. You know what? We had shirts, but we've actually run out. We got to get a new order on. But you can go to the website and you can send us a message, and we'll make sure we get one out to you. So thanks for asking.
All right. Well, thank you. We really enjoyed this interview, and we look forward to more interviews with more candidates. But I hope that our viewers enjoyed this as well, because it's a large pick, really is.
Yeah.
And we don't want anybody picking it for us. We want to make our own decisions,
That's what it's
and that's
about.
the best way. That's the best way to go to the ballot: being educated.
Yep. Absolutely.
Thanks for having me. I do appreciate it.
All
Yeah,
right. You
thank
have a
you.
good evening.
Okay, you too.
All right. That was a great interview. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, that was really good. He's definitely awakened, and he sees what's going on, and he's putting his his front foot forward. He's been called to purpose, and that's what really has happened with a lot of people since 2018, 2019, even before that, is that they see that the only way we're going to take this country back is grassroots, and that's what Bill Cooper said in his book Behold a Pale Horse. Was that the only way this was going to be, we were going to be able to avoid a new world order and drain the swamp, is for just common people to make that choice to go to Washington or go to our capital and stand for what needs to be, what our rights are and in our Constitution. That's why it was written the way it was written, and it's a living, breathing document, like Bill Cooper said. He was a true hero to this country.
Yeah. So commission, what is that? Midnight Sky wants to know if we're going to hear from the local commission on school board candidates.
Yeah. Well, I think we should be able to do that for sure too. So we're trying to get as many people as we can to join the platform and speak their truth.
Yeah. So anyway, that was a great show. Thank you guys for joining us. It was a good evening, and we'll try to line up some more interviews with candidates. The line is drawing near. We just have a couple, 3 more Fridays?
Yep. Yeah.
So I really would love to get Dan Green on there. So Carol Jean Jordan, if you're watching us tonight, or if your friends are watching us, spread the word. We need to get him on here, because I can't vote for somebody that somebody's just telling me is a good person. I need to hear it with my own ears and you
No
slap
more.
some questions, right?
Yeah, no more of the. He's a good guy. I play golf with him every Sunday. He's a good guy. You
Yeah.
vote for him. I do this, that, and the other. That's
He
what it
needs
used
to
to
do
be.
the work.
Yeah, you got to do the work like Marcus.
Yeah, and you want to know that you can reach the representative. Like, the fact that we're able to reach them, and we're not like this big broadcast company, and they're willing to come on, that says a lot. It means your representative is going to be available to you, whoever wins.
Exactly.
And they're not too busy or too big. So
Mhm.
guys, if you're out there, we're reaching out to you. Come on the show.
Come on down.
Yep. So we're going to close it out, right, John?
Yep, that was a great show.
Yep. And Mike, we love you. We're thinking about you, and we miss you on the show. We have our little hiccups without you. Reminds us how much we love you. All right. Good night, everybody.
All right, good night.